Did you know there is a canyon in New Mexico where your own voice can come back sounding like it belongs to someone else? Not an echo, not distortion, but a different accent entirely. In 1974, a geology graduate student named Thomas Calder drove 3 hours north of Albuquerque to document unusual acoustic behavior reported by hikers. The location was a narrow sandstone cut known locally as Arroyo del Silencio, a place avoided by ranchers who said the canyon answered wrong. Thomas arrived with a reel-to-reel recorder, a microphone, and the quiet confidence of someone who believed science could explain everything. His first recordings were normal. Wind footsteps, his own voice reading calibration numbers. Then, at exactly 6:42 p.m., he asked a simple question into the canyon wall, his voice flat, Midwestern, unmistakably American. The reply came back half a second later, but it wasn't his voice. The accent was thick, unfamiliar, with clipped consonants that sounded Eastern European. Thomas laughed at first, assuming interference or prank echoes from another hiker. He repeated the test from different distances, different angles. Every time, the canyon responded with the same foreign cadence, as if the rock itself had learned to speak in a language it shouldn't know. Back at his motel, Thomas played the tape again and again. The words were his, but the voice was not. The pitch was lower, the rhythm wrong, and beneath it, barely audible, was a second layer, like breathing too close to the microphone. He noted it in his field journal, unaware he had just signed something far more permanent than a research log. Over the next week, Thomas returned daily. He documented voices responding with accents ranging from Appalachian to Caribbean, sometimes answering questions he hadn't finished asking. When he said his name, the canyon replied with a different one. When he asked the date, it answered with years that hadn't happened yet. The final entry in his journal that week ended mid-sentence. The pen line dragged sharply across the page, as if his hand had been pulled away. The tapes were mailed to his university advisor in Santa Fe. They arrived without explanation, wrapped carefully, as though Thomas had taken time to be neat. The advisor listened once and never again. He locked the tapes in a filing cabinet and filed a report with a federal office he would later claim not to remember contacting. 3 days later, Thomas Calder was reported missing. His car was found near the canyon. His recorder was still running, and the last thing it captured was his voice asking, very calmly, why he no longer sounded like himself. The case should have ended there, another missing person swallowed by desert and time. But Arroyo del Silencio didn't stay quiet. In 1982, a state-funded survey team was sent to map erosion patterns in the same canyon. Their equipment included modern audio sensors designed to measure resonance and sound decay. On the second night, one of the technicians radioed base, confused and laughing, saying the canyon had just repeated his joke back to him in what sounded like his deceased grandfather's accent. The transmission cut off mid-laugh. The official report blamed faulty equipment and fatigue. Unofficially, 2 members of the team resigned within weeks, citing stress-related disorders. One of them later admitted, off-record, that the canyon didn't just reflect voices. It chose them. The sensors showed no consistent acoustic pattern. Instead, the canyon responded differently depending on who was speaking, as if it recognized something personal, something buried. In 1991, a linguistics professor from Arizona State University petitioned for access to the site after hearing rumors of the Calder tapes. She believed the phenomenon might be linked to auditory pareidolia, or subconscious expectation. She brought students. They spoke into the canyon in controlled phrases. The canyon answered with accents none of them shared. One student broke down crying when the voice that came back matched her mother's, including a speech impediment no one else knew about. That night, the professor recorded something else. When no one was speaking, the canyon still whispered. Low rhythmic, as if practicing. The audio analysis showed overlapping speech patterns, layered and inconsistent, like fragments of conversations pressed together. The professor sent her findings to a colleague who specialized in Cold War psychological research. His response was brief and unsettling. He asked if the canyon was near any former government test sites. It was. Less than 15 miles away, a now-abandoned facility had once experimented with directional sound, language imprinting, and stress-induced identity fragmentation during the early 1960s. Funding for further research was denied without explanation. Road signs leading to the canyon were quietly removed, and yet people still went missing. Hikers, amateur filmmakers, locals who claimed the canyon was calling them by name. In every case, search teams reported hearing voices that didn't match the people speaking beside them. Voices that seemed to answer questions meant for someone else. In 2003, a wildfire tore through the region, burning away vegetation and exposing layers of rock untouched for centuries. Firefighters reported strange echoes during containment, commands returning with accents that slowed reaction times, creating confusion and near-fatal mistakes. After the fire, a temporary monitoring station was installed under the justification of geological safety. What it recorded was never released publicly. A leaked summary, circulated briefly online before disappearing, described the canyon as an acoustic memory field. According to the document, the rock formations exhibited micro-vibrational structures capable of storing and replaying human speech patterns, not as recordings, but as impressions, accents, emotional inflections, linguistic habits. The report suggested prolonged exposure could result in partial identity bleed, where a person's sense of self began to shift, subtly at first. Changes in speech, then thought. Then memory. The final recommendation was simple. No long-term human presence, no attempts to communicate. Do not speak into the canyon. Today, Arroyo del Silencio does not appear on most maps. Satellite images blur oddly at its coordinates. Locals still avoid it, especially at dusk when the air cools and sound carries farther than it should. Some claim that if you stand at the edge and stay silent, you can hear conversations drifting up from below. Arguments, laughter. Final goodbyes, not echoes, but rehearsals. And sometimes, if the wind is right, the canyon speaks first, in your accent, before you ever open your mouth.